We are an online homeschool program that's holistic and also culturally grounded for pre-K through 12th grade students of the African diaspora. We have qualified teachers who are mostly African American, and a lot of them have expatriated to other countries.
I love that because these kids are getting to learn from people who are choosing a non-traditional life and people who are choosing purpose over money.
What all of our parents have in common is that they're dedicated, forward thinkers who want their children to have a well-rounded education that may not be in the traditional path. I saw the challenges that students were having in the public schools. I want the community of students to be able to have that kind of individualized push towards mastery, not just in academics, but emotional awareness. They're going to advance more quickly academically just because of the personal attention that they're getting.
All right, guys, well, welcome to another episode of the Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Carpenter, aka Michael the Architect. The Blueprint Podcast is here to help you grow your faith, build wealth, and make smart real estate decisions. So our goal is just to add value, help you be all that God has called you to be on this earth. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I actually was homeschooled until 8th grade, okay? And so my parents chose to homeschool me, and I started going to public school around middle school because I wanted to play football. My dad was a football star, so I wanted to be like my dad, right? So let me go to public school. But I spent a lot of my younger elementary years being homeschooled. And I ran into this incredible human the other day at the coffee shop, and she runs a virtual homeschool program. And so obviously I'm like, yo, we need to talk about this because I'm really excited. Homeschooling was a big important piece of who I am and who I developed to become. And so I'm really excited to be having Miss Nicola Asante with Whole Living Academy in the studio today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. This is such a beautiful space.
Absolutely. So we met at Doshi House, which is like one of my favorite coffee shops here in Houston. Third Ward. It's such an eclectic space, and I always meet such awesome people in there. And so I'm really excited that we were able to bump into each other at the coffee shop. So why don't you go ahead and kind of tell us what is Whole Living Academy, so people kind of have a sense of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, absolutely. So we are an online homeschool program that's holistic and also culturally grounded for pre-K through 12th grade students of the African diaspora. Okay. So our curriculum not only focuses on rigorous academics, but also 21st century skills, critical thinking, and students understanding their history and culture from the Pan-African diaspora, so to say, like children of African descent all around the world. Okay. So we have children who are here in Houston, who are in the Gambia, who are in Rwanda, in the UK, Mexico, Jamaica, Canada, and they're all able to come together and learn together in a safe space with qualified teachers.
Wow, it's great. That's incredible. And you gave me the opportunity to actually teach on entrepreneurship to the class a couple weeks ago. And I was just so honored to have that experience. And it was so fun for me to be able to speak to kids that, I was them, 15 years ago. And so it was really cool to look in the eyes of like almost myself sometimes. Like I knew where a lot of these kids are, not necessarily all of them, but some of them I could really relate to kind of what they're going through and what their journey is, right? And so it was really cool just to kind of to see them and have that experience. I really appreciate that. And one thing that I want to do, because I really want to dive into more of your story, but I got like some feedback from my audience, and they're like, hey, we want you to add some more like games and more fun to the podcast, right? Okay. So I have this game that I want to play first before we really dive into the episode. I think your kids are going to love watching this on the rerun. So have you heard of that game, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
I have.
Okay, so I have 5 questions for you. Since you're a teacher and you run a school, we're gonna see if you're smarter than a 5th grader. Okay,
I hope I am.
Let's go. We'll see. Okay, so the first question is: the Costa Rica borders 2 countries. Nicaragua is one of those countries. What is the other one?
Ooh, geography is like my weak spot.
Yeah.
And I haven't been to Costa Rica.
Really? Okay, and you're a world traveler, so it's interesting. You've been in a lot of places.
I've been a lot of places, but Costa Rica is not one of them. Costa Rica, Nicaragua. Do I have like a multiple choice?
No, it's just that we just got
just
it here.
Fill in the blank.
So I'll give you a hint. Think shipping channel.
Panama.
Yeah, Panama.
Okay. All right.
Because I didn't give you multiple choice, I gave you a really good hint. Okay. Okay. So, what is the capital of Australia?
Ooh. Okay. Let me think about that. The capital of
Most people
Australia.
think Sydney, but it's not Sydney.
Is it Melbourne?
It's not. That's a good guess, though.
Is it? I haven't been to Australia.
Okay. So, we're at Canberra.
Canberra?
Yeah, Canberra. I didn't know that. I was shocked. I was like, what?
I
literally never heard of that country. I was thinking of like all the cities I know in Australia, and so that's the capital city of Australia. Okay.
Right. Ask me the capital of Tanzania.
Okay. See, I knew you were gonna get all the African ones right. So
right.
So okay, but here's
this is great. I love it.
Okay, so let's switch. Okay, so geography isn't your strongest. Okay, so let's switch to a different one. Okay.
Yes.
So a different genre. So in classical music, what instruments usually comprise a string quartet?
Okay, so let's go with violin.
Okay.
Have to have that.
Yep.
Cello.
Okay. Yep. One more.
Okay. Would that be like a bass?
I have no idea, to be honest. Like I don't. This is the question I was hoping you could answer. So you got two right. There's one we're missing. There's one we're missing.
Okay. So we said violin. We said cello.
Yeah, you got two violins, a cello, and a viola.
Oh yes, I forgot about the viola.
Yeah.
So I was actually in band.
Okay.
Yeah, I played the clarinet.
Okay.
And currently I play the guitar.
Nice.
And I've started playing the kalimba.
Okay.
But
what is the kalimba?
It's like the thumb piano. It's like an African thumb piano, and you like just go like this with your fingers, and it makes the most beautiful music.
Okay. Nice. Okay. In the initials of the federal agency known as NASA, what does the first A stand for?
So that would be the National Aeronautics. Aeronautics?
Yep, aeronautics.
Okay, yeah.
I was seeing if you were going to get the rest of them.
I think Space Administration.
Yeah, I think I didn't list out the rest of them, but yeah, you got aeronautics. I like that. Okay, this last one's a cakewalk. Those first four questions were kind of hard. Okay, so this one should be pretty easy for you. How many countries are there in Africa?
54.
All right, there we go. Yes. I knew you were going to get that one.
If I didn't get that one, then just kick me out of the studio.
I was going to be like, disqualified, I can't do it.
You know what? Never mind. Let's not even do this.
Okay, so I think we'll give it to you. I think you're smarter than a fifth grader. At least you can figure it out.
Right,
if I give you multiple choice, I think you would have got them all. So, okay, so going back to Whole Living Academy.
I don't know. I don't think I would have gotten the Australian
Really?
one.
Okay, yeah, that was a tough one. I'm not gonna lie. Which that show was honestly really tough. I mean, like, I got respect for anybody who goes on that show. So, so talk a little bit more about Whole Living Academy. So I know it's an online educational platform for kids that are all over the world. How does that compare to like a more traditional homeschool experience that most people think of when they think of homeschooling?
Right. So in terms of like your traditional homeschool experience, like what you had, you know, from birth to 8th grade. So they say it's like, okay, you're sitting down at the kitchen table with your parents and they're drilling you on these, you know, problems, maybe like, okay, come on, you know this, you know this, slope, intercept, you know, and then they get tired of you, you get tired of them, you know, but you push through every day.
Right.
And it's very unlikely that a child would be able to get everything that they get with Whole Living Academy at home with their parents, because who has the capacity for that? You know, who has the capacity to kind of have as much energy as multiple teachers? So imagine you as a parent, would you be able to get your child to learn trigonometry, Kiswahili, advanced conversational Spanish, martial arts, debate and public speaking, coding, financial literacy, theater, music, all of these things within 1 week? Mindfulness is like, okay, come on. Now we're going to meditate. Okay, come on. Now it's time for you to, you know, do scene, coast, you know, 10. Come on, let's go. Let's go.
I love that. And I think my mom watches all my episodes, so she's totally gonna watch this and she's totally gonna agree. Like, it can be a lot trying to do all the things, right? And so like I really struggle with fractions. And so like when I was in school, like, we just brought in a tutor. My tutor, Miss Dahlia, I still remember her to this day. She came in and taught me fractions, right? Because mom just couldn't get over the hump of the fractions, right? So yeah, I could definitely see how being a parent trying to do that all on your own can be a lot. And a lot of homeschool homeschool parents are extremely intelligent, educated people, and they still kind of sometimes struggle with that.
It's just so much, and it's hard for your child to even keep an attention span if you're trying to do that all yourself as, you know, one person or as, you know, two parents. You're trying to go through all of those different subjects yourself, and your child is just trying to take it all in. It's easier to do it within a group setting because they're able to kind of play off the energy of other children as well. You know, it's not just, you know, me and you, you know, father and daughter, mother and son going back and forth debating with each other. They have these other 15 students that they're able to, you know, debate with.
And so take me through what is a day in the life of a kid in your school. So obviously they're still homeschooled. So are they homeschooled in terms of like, hey, they're just at home, but they're still doing a full work day? Or are they like going to your classes half the day and then they're at home, you know, with their parents the other half the day? How does that typically work?
Yes, so we try to keep a balance between their time with us and their time that they have with their parents, because a lot of our students are athletes. So they participate, you know, we have one child who's the state champion for wrestling right now in Maryland. You know, we have students that are, you know, like all-star swimmers. We have, you know, multiple students that are black belts in different types of martial arts and so on. So,
which that caught me off guard, because when I was asking the kids like what their hobbies were in the class, I was expecting to hear like video games, and then they were like martial arts, and I was like, whoa, we're in a different, like, okay, these kids are different, like, so
right, yeah, absolutely. So their typical day, you know, includes about 4 to 5 hours of classes with us. You know, so in the mornings we have foreign language, whichever foreign languages that they're taking 4 days per week. And then on Fridays we have whole school mindfulness, where we share our highs and lows from the week and then work on different mindfulness strategies, like maybe breathing or things that can help to calm us down, navigating self-awareness, self-image, you know, and so on, right? Then they have their academic classes after foreign language during the week. Their math, social studies, English language arts, science. And what they're learning in those classes depends on their grade level, so to say. You know, as you go higher up, you're working on, you know, your biology, chemistry, physics, and so on.
And do they get grouped up based off of their grade?
They get grouped up more so based on their readiness than their age. So, you know, we have students that are in the 11th grade class that are 16 years old, and we have some that are 12 years old if they're ready for that. So which is the unique
opportunity they get with you that they wouldn't get at a traditional school, because they're strict, like, hey, you do this X, Y, and Z. You guys have the flexibility to really move at that kid's pace and their learning style and just their overall, I guess, where they're at educationally.
Absolutely. And what happens sometimes, some parents are more advanced or more invested with their child progressing more quickly for various reasons than others. So they may put their children with us for one-on-one tutoring during the summer so that they can move up to another group faster. When the school year starts again, because they're geared towards early graduation, early college enrollment, and so on for that child's individual goals. And each one of our students has an individual plan besides what they're doing with the group. Like, for example, we have one student right now who graduated earlier this year, and she's on a medical track. So we had been working with her on that since she was 13 years old, you know, making sure she not only understands the academics, but medical terminology, having doctors to come in and speak so that she could get a perspective of what it would be like to go to different medical schools in different countries and prepare for that. On the financial literacy side, we helped her to start a business. She makes custom jewelry. And she also worked at a clothing store once she turned 14. She saved up all her money. We helped her put it into a college savings account. And then it grew to be over $30,000 that she was able to use for her transition to college. So when she graduated from Whole Living Academy, she was 16 years old, and she already had her first 3 full-time semesters of her pre-med program done.
Okay.
So that's
okay,
what
and
I
then
mean
in
when
terms
I say
of
we work
like
with each
that's
child.
that's incredible. So in terms of there's always accrediting standards and like the credits transfer. How does that how were y'all able to get her those 3 semesters that like a college would accept? You know what I mean? Like how do y'all finagle those kind of situations?
So and this is something that a lot of parents don't know. You have that same power as a parent. Mm-hmm. It's not something that we have, but then parents don't have. It's a power that parents have too, but they're just not aware of it.
Okay.
You can enroll your child in college at any age, as long as you have their transcripts that are reflecting that you have gone through all of their high school credits with them. Okay. In the state of Texas, you have to have 26 high school credits. Okay. And that can be over a period of 4 years. It can be over a period of 2 years. Mm-hmm. If you're doing something that's really intensive, but you just have to keep track of those credit hours. Okay. And then you present that transcript.
And then you just make your own certificate, or do you have to go to the state and the state will give you the certificate?
No, you can make it in Google Sheets or Google Docs.
Interesting. Okay. That is so fascinating.
You totally have the power.
So how do they know that you actually taught them and you didn't just create a certificate and give it to them?
They don't know.
Okay.
They don't, but your performance in college
you can't
going
fake it.
to indicate whether you're actually prepared for that. And in the state of Texas, you have to take something called an Accuplacer test, right, which shows your college readiness. Mm-hmm. And if you score lower on the Accuplacer test, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to get into college. Mm-hmm. It does mean that you have to take some foundational courses first, right, before you can take the courses that are going to count towards your actual degree.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, there's no barrier where it's like you can't go to college at whatever age.
Okay. But since y'all's kids are all over the place, you got kids in Canada, Rwanda, Maryland, how do you guys balance? Is that up to the parents to make sure they're tracking, to make sure their kids are on track on, what those credits need to be?
Well, we keep track of it, and I think that's one of the reasons why we stay small, so that we can be able to keep a thumb on what's happening with each individual student and their path.
And how small are you guys? Like how many students are enrolled with you guys?
We have about 60 students.
Okay, 60. Okay, and is that on the high end, or y'all have capacity for more? Or are you like, hey, we tapped out?
Last year we received a grant from VELA, and that allowed us to take in more students on scholarship. So we had 90 students. Okay. Gotcha. Last year, because some of them didn't have the capacity to pay tuition, but we were able to cover them for that. Okay. So we do have the capacity for more students. Okay. But we generally stay around 60 unless there's some funding there that allows us to open up opportunities to more parents.
Gotcha. And then how many teachers do you guys have?
About 10.
Okay.
I think altogether.
Wow, so that's an incredible ratio. So you're looking at like 5 to 6 students per teacher.
Yes, for some of the classes. Yeah. So especially for the younger students, like first grade level, we keep those classes super, super small. Yeah. So that each one of the children, can get personal attention. Yeah,
that's almost one-on-one tutoring right there. That's something that you can't get in no private school, public school. Like you get a 6-to-1 ratio. Like what?
Right. And we cap off the core classes at a 15 student maximum. Okay. But that can vary from year to year depending on our student group. I'll be like, no more students in this group. Okay. Depending on who the students are that are in the group, right? Okay. Because, right now in our 9th grade class, all of those students are super self-motivated. Mm-hmm. So it's like we can have a full class. We have 15 students in that class. Mm-hmm. But, for some of our younger groups, we have some students that are on the spectrum. We have some students that speak English as a second language. Mm-hmm. So it's like, no, we're going to keep that group at 5 students. And then we're going to bring in a teacher's assistant who can help this student, in the breakout room to be able to develop their reading fluency, and help this student in the breakout room, to develop their fluency with the English language,
Wow. That's incredible. Who are the teachers? Like who are the people that are helping teach?
Yeah, so we have qualified teachers who are mostly, African American, and a lot of them have expatriated to other countries. Yeah. And that allows them to, focus on the mission of Whole Living Academy, without needing us to have the funding of a public school, because we don't have that currently. We don't receive any government funding.
Yeah.
Our funding comes from parents paying tuition.
Okay.
And then we'll get a little bit of donations, you know, from parents. We've gotten one grant so far for $10,000, but our budget is a 6-figure budget. So that didn't make like a huge dent. Yeah. Most of our support comes directly from parents paying tuition. Yeah. So, you know, of course, we're able to pay the teachers well, but not to pay them what they would be making. Right, you know, we're not even going for an 8-hour day. Right?
Okay, gotcha.
So they're not making what they'd be making if they were working in a public school system. Right. But our teachers are devoted to the mission. You know, a lot of them have children, you know, that are in our program as well. Right. Our 2 lead teachers, you know, besides myself, they have 6 children. That are in our program. Wow. So, you know, they're super invested for the long term. They've actually moved to Rwanda. Okay. So, you know, for their whole family, they're able to, they have, you know, and I hope they don't mind me saying this, but I think it's a great point to share. They have a family of 12 in their household, and their living expenses, because they're in Rwanda, are less than $2,000 a month. Wow. Right? Okay. So that allows them to be able to really be devoted to the mission of Whole Living Academy without being like, oh, well, I need to constantly be chasing the next thing. You know, oh, can I make higher pay here? Can I make an extra $10 an hour over there? Right. But then you don't really get centered in what's going to be the best thing for your children and what aligns with, you know, what you feel your life purpose is, you know, as an individual. So we've all structured our lives in a way, you know, we have some teachers who are stay-at-home moms. Our Spanish teachers, one of them lives in Rwanda. Okay. And she's actually from New York. And the other one lives in Mexico, and he's from Houston.
That's so cool.
So it gives us just a different flexibility.
Yeah, and I love that, because these kids are getting to learn from people who are choosing a non-traditional life and people who are choosing purpose over money, or choosing purpose over. And I think that's just a different experience to have. You know, if your teacher is just there to collect a paycheck so they can pay their bills, that's a different perspective than like, hey, my teacher is actually living in a different country and they're choosing to do that because they want a different life for themselves or their kids. And that's just I think that's just, I don't think that most people could even really wrap their brain around. That's a different way of living life, right? And so I want to talk about that a little bit. So I want to come back to some of the logistics of the school, because we've had 3 conversations and I'm just so fascinated by it. I'm just like, what? How are you doing? This is so cool. But you mentioned life purpose, right? So I want you to kind of go into your life purpose. Like, why are you doing this, right? I mean, and we didn't go into your background, but you're extremely educated. I mean, you could probably be working in higher education. Like, you know what I mean? You don't have to be like doing this, right? So talk about your life purpose and kind of go into some of what is your background so people have a better understanding of why what you're doing is so incredible.
Right. Yeah. Like, why do this? Why not? You know, and I do have, I got my undergraduate degree in creative writing, African-American studies, and French. Okay. From the University of Houston. And then my master's degree is in curriculum and instruction with a focus in instructional technology. And I also did a graduate certificate in Africana studies also at the University of Houston. Okay. I'm also certified as a naturopath. I speak 4 languages. So I have all these things in my pocket where, sure, I could go like get a job somewhere and be able to, you know, command high pay, you know, maybe higher pay within. Yeah, absolutely. You know, the life of an entrepreneur is not easy, people. So,
absolutely.
However, you know, my journey has been, you know, it started out with, I feel like I've always been an educator. Let me say that first. Yeah. And I'll try to tell the quick version, you know, of this story. But starting out when I was transitioning into kindergarten, I was tested as, you know, GT in the state of Texas, which is like gifted and talented. Right. So because of that, I was separated from, you know, the other students, and I was taken into a small group of students in a setting that, you know, in hindsight was more like a homeschool setting. We didn't have a traditional classroom like the other students at my same school. We were like building robots and like messing with computers and going to the teacher's house and baking bread. We had bean bags in the classroom. Okay. I was an Odyssey of the mind. I used to dress up as a clown and like go to senior citizens' homes and do magic tricks. books. You know?
Yeah, that's so cool. Our gifted and talented program at my school was not like that. So yeah, you were blessed.
It was out close to the Woodlands.
Okay.
Yes, it was at Oak Ridge Elementary. I think it's changed at this point.
Okay.
At the time, they were kind of experimenting with different things in terms of their, GT program.
Right.
We were doing photography. Like, we were doing all kinds of stuff.
Right.
So the other children at my school, the other children in my neighborhood, they were not having the same school experiences that I was having. Every day I was reading a book. I was writing plays, writing poetry, having a totally different experience from them. So, like, by the time I was in 3rd grade, I tested on a college level. Right. And the program that I was in was nurturing to that. I was reading like Ayn Rand before I was in middle school.
Dang. I don't even know what that is. That's
no, like Anthem, Fountainhead.
Okay, yeah.
You probably remember like Fountainhead, from high school.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So when I got to the high school, and I was with the same small group of students from like kindergarten through 9th grade.
Okay.
Right. And I would have been with them all the way through graduation, but I didn't value it as much because I felt so alienated from my community. So I was like, I want to go to regular school.
Right.
I want to be with the black kids. I want to do black stuff. I don't want to.
Yeah.
So when I got to high school, I went to Sharpstown.
Okay.
And I was like, what is happening? Like, it was the first time I had ever been exposed to high school students who could not read. Like, it was just like mind blowing to me.
Right.
That it could be like this, that we could have 50 children in a classroom and like go through a whole 50-minute period and like learn nothing.
Right.
Because everybody's just playing around and the teacher doesn't have the patience to deal with it. So I started helping the other students to navigate that environment because I was far ahead academically at that time of where they were. So there was nothing for me to learn in terms of the academics. So I took the role of, helping the teachers because it felt like most of the teachers were not the same ethnicity as the students at Sharpstown. And they didn't have a lot of patience for them. So, if the students were kind of, acting wild a little bit, then it was just like, oh, y'all are dumb, y'all are stupid, instead of like, oh, you can learn biology. This might be challenging for you, but I'm going to help you, to understand this. So I felt like I had to step in the gap, and like, hey, I'm going to help you get ready for this test. Hey, I'm going to help you understand how to do these 2-step equations.
Right.
And that kind of became my role within that environment. Okay. And that was my first introduction into teaching. Okay. But I wasn't really familiar with homeschooling. Yeah. So I put my son in public school, and I, was like a single mother and all of this, when I had my son, after me and his dad, had separated, and it was like, okay, you're not having good experience, the area that we were zoned to, he was having a lot of challenges within that environment, and the teachers were just too stressed out to be able to help him. I had this fear. Yeah. I grew up, my dad was in prison. My family members were into all kinds of stuff. So I'm like, man, I don't want to see my son end up on the wrong track later on in life. Right. Because he starts getting disengaged now from not having what I had. Yeah. So I was like, I have to do something different. And thankfully I was able to find a homeschool co-op here in 3rd Ward, because I was, at the University of Houston, at the time.
And you were in school at that time,
I was in school. I was in undergrad. Okay, my son is like 21 years old now. He's a grown man.
Yeah. Of that,
yeah. So I was able to have that environment where he was able to homeschool, but also be around other children. And that co-op setting was great for me, because I was able to teach in exchange for tuition. I was able to still go to school. Okay. And then come back, teach the children some more, and just have that balance. Right. And my son, he just thrived. He just skyrocketed. Yeah. He started doing computer programming, by the time he was in 1st grade. And now he's a master at it, as an adult, because he's been doing it the whole entire time. Right. Wow. Okay. So I saw how, and it was an African-centered school, like Afrocentric, culturally centered, culturally grounded. Right. And I saw the benefit in that for him. And I wanted to offer, and I had done tutoring, like you talked about the AVID program earlier. I had done tutoring, you know, in the public schools, in the community, at the Shape Center, all these different settings. Nobody wants to teach math, right? So I was always the person that was willing to do it, you know, like, I'll do whatever, you know. Okay. And I saw the challenges that students were having in the public schools. And I was like, man, I want the community of students to be able to have what my son has had, you know, to have that same type of attention and love and nurturing and understanding of culture, you know, that kind of individualized push towards mastery, not just in academics, but emotional awareness and in the topics that you're interested in. You know, we literally start new classes based on student interest.
I love it.
You know, we have a student right now that wants to go to Berkeley School of Music in Boston. So we're like, okay, well, next semester we're going to introduce vocal training so that, you know, you can get that within this setting to get ready for that next step.
And that's one thing that I noticed that I was telling the kids when I was teaching the class. I was like, you get to be in an environment where you get to pursue those things, right? And obviously schools that have resources can give you new opportunities, right? You know, I was in a school, I went to a small school that didn't have a lot of resources, but we had a 3D class. I learned how to do video editing. So I still got exposed to some cool things, right? Some of the schools that you mentioned earlier may not have those, right?
Right. It really depends on what, you know, where you land,
zone, where you live at.
Games, you know? Like, what district are you in? May the odds be ever in your favor.
Right. And that's so sad. And I think, you know, when you think about, you know, those are just socioeconomic, you know, things that impact how somebody grows up and the education that they get. You know, something that you said earlier really hit me personally was when you were talking about when you were feeling alienated, right? When you're this extremely intelligent third, fourth grader and you're different than other kids, right? And that's something that I always felt as a homeschooled kid was I was different, right? And we kind of had this kind of us versus them mentality against the public school kids, right? And we kind of thought like, oh, they're, and we almost kind of formed our own identity, like, oh, we're better than them, right? Because, you know, whatever the things that we did, but really it was deep insecurity of like, hey, I'm different, right? That's something I also felt because I grew up in a predominantly white environment, right? A predominantly white school. When I did go to public school, predominantly white church, a lot of our community was white. And so when it comes to embracing my blackness, embracing who I am as a black man, how that applies to my education, how that applies to my athleticism, how that applies to my whole life, right? Was something that like I've really even come to grips with now as a grown man, and coming to Houston was like really instrumental for that for me. So how are you helping your students go through that? Because I'm sure they're all like going through that into some varying degrees, right? I know a lot of your kids are in your school or in you know, in athletics or in, you know, so they're finding community in other ways, but I'm sure there is still that otherism of like, hey, I'm not like other people, right?
So for us, what our students have expressed is feeling that otherism before coming to Whole Living Academy.
Okay.
Because you have to consider we're a virtual homeschool program.
Yeah.
So people who are coming to us for specific reasons, right? Just for example, when you talked about growing up in that community where you didn't have other Black people around you, we have students like that. You know, we have, you know, one student right now, his mom teaches at Yale, and they're in a community where he doesn't see people who look like him, where he does feel that alienation. And then he comes with us and it's like, he feels like he's at home, you know, like he can walk in and take his shoes off and sit down on the couch, put his feet up, right? You know, it's like, okay, this is where I feel accepted. This is where I get to be with other children of my culture. We have some students who were living out in Oregon in a community like that as well. And, you know, their mom consistently like calls me and thanks me and says like, my boys have cultural awareness because you came into my life. There's no way that I would have been able to pour that much into them and like they'd be willing to receive it without being in that group setting with you, right?
Yeah.
And funny thing is, that particular mama, she and the children's father, they recently decided to move to Maryland because we do have, you know, a huge group of students in Maryland and there's more of that cultural community there. So they're like, okay, you know, now they've already been with us for 5 years, you know, almost 5 years. And now they're like, hey, you know, we're actually going to go and put them in a physical environment where they can be around more children who look like them as well as they get more towards, you know, high school graduation, right?
That's so good.
And then we have a lot of students who have experienced bullying for various reasons within a public school setting. Like maybe they're a little different in some way, you know, maybe they're, you know, neurologically divergent in some way. We have certain students that might look different. You know, maybe they're smaller for their age because of some medical reason,
right?
You know, then the next student, or, you know, we've had students who have sickle cell.
Okay.
And consistently have to go in and out of the hospital, and that can affect. We have students who are, you know, the children of celebrities, and they're constantly, you know, traveling. And when they've tried going into a public school, they're getting bullied, you know, because people recognize like, oh, you know, you have a different privilege than I have. So when they come with us, it's like, I can just have fun with my friends, learn, be at peace, you know, grow, instead of having all these other challenges. And, you know, like you talked about with the athletics, because our students are in different, you know, groups with other, you know, generally homeschooled children within their community, once they finish with us in the afternoons, they still have that sense of, you know, in-person community as well. Outside of just, you know, the online community. And maybe, you know, maybe it's not anybody else that looks like you in your gymnastics class. But, you know, you get to be with us during the day, and then you get to go do your gymnastics, so you feel like you have a sense of balance.
Yeah,
you know?
That's so good. And so you've mentioned some of the parents, and like I kind of just want to understand a little bit more about who these parents are, what they're trying to accomplish for their kids, right? You mentioned earlier that they're, you know, coming from situations and maybe their kid was getting bullied, but like, what are these parents looking for? Why are they doing this? You know, there's parents that you said are expats or living in other countries. Like, take me into the mindset of who these people are and like who these kids are being raised by.
Yes, I would say what all of our parents have in common is that they're dedicated, forward thinkers who want their children to have a well-rounded education that may not be in the traditional path. You know, the parents are usually non-traditional in some way. You know, for example, one of my babies, she's 14. She lives in the Gambia.
Okay.
And she's planning on doing early graduation. She's, you know, already on an 11th grade level, and she literally like just turned 14, right?
Yeah.
And her parents, you know, they're not so concerned about her going to college because she's an expert baker.
Okay.
So she's planning on transitioning into opening a patisserie / coffee shop.
Okay.
Once, you know, she finishes her time with us, and she's planning on going to culinary school in Italy, you know, after her time with us, and then opening a coffee shop / patisserie in New York, right? Wow. But her parents, they're both architects.
Okay.
You know, they decided to retire early, you know, in their 40s from the United States, move to the Gambia, start a farm, start a training center, you know, to train people there in skills related to architecture and construction, right? So the parents are already forward thinkers, and they're thinking about their children also having non-traditional opportunities. You know, we have, you know, of course, the majority of our students do go, you know, straight into college upon graduation, right? But some of them decide to take a different path, and like, we're not discouraging students from that. We're preparing them for whatever their individual path is, you know, whether that's being a real estate investor, a content creator, you know, a coffee shop / patisserie owner,
I love
right?
that. Yeah.
So
something that I forgot to ask you about earlier that I was fascinated about is when you talk about y'all's grading system. I think, and you said it was based off of Swahili based kind of model. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we name the classes Swahili phrases instead of using, oh, you're in first grade, you're in second grade, you're in third grade, and so on. It's more like, Mtoto Dunya, Mtoto and Nyota,
Yeah, so
Mtoto
cool.
Maji,
Yeah.
Mtoto Moto.
And the kids
Mtoto
embrace
Hewa.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the reason why we do that is because we have students of different ages in each class. You know, let's say you have a child who is 16 years old, who is neurodivergent in some way and needs to learn on an 8th grade level. You don't want to say, oh, you're in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Because that does something psychologically where they're feeling like,
something's wrong with me.
Something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right. I'm behind in some way. Right.
Yeah.
Or if you have a student, you know, we have several students that are Francophone African students, and they can be brilliant, like in French, but then in English, because it's something that they're learning, they may need to be placed, you know, 4 grade levels down so that they can grow from there. Right. Yeah. So you don't want to say like, oh yeah, you know, you're in the 3rd grade. You know, like literally I have a child, you know, who is learning on a 3rd grade level in English. And I tested her recently in French for reading comprehension, and she was on a 10th grade level in French reading comprehension. But her parents, they want her to be fluent in both. Yeah. So, you know, you don't want to make the child feel like, you know, they're stigmatized in some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's the reason why, you know,
I love that.
And when children, if they do transition back into the public school system, they can transition back in ahead of grade level based on their time with us. Because we have had some students who have come in like strictly, you know, because of the pandemic, you know, and then their time with us has allowed them to skip 1 or 2 grades when they've transitioned back into the public school system. Yeah. Right. Okay.
So would you say that, and I'm trying to be careful how to ask this question, but like I guess and we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but in terms of like comparing your program to a public school or a private school system, what would you say the pros and cons are? I'll say it like that, because I don't want to say that like, oh, like your program is better than a public school program, because like we've talked about earlier, that could be based on just what school district you're in, right?
Absolutely.
So like, I guess like lastly, if there's a parent watching this that's thinking, okay, hey, I think I might want to look into this. What are the things they need to be considering, whether like, hey, this is the right thing for their kid or not?
So, I mean, one thing that's going to be very different would just be the student-teacher ratio and the focus on each child. Like, I've taught in the public school system before. And during the time that I taught in the public school system, I remember I was trying to go help this one child, and I was teaching 7th grade writing. And he was 15 in the 7th grade. And I was like, okay, let me work with you on he wasn't reading, you know, like pretty much at all. He was reading maybe on like a kindergarten level, right? So I'm like, let me help you with this. And I remember the dean came in and she's like, you can't do that. You know, you're going to get written up. You can't spend more than 90 seconds with each child. Right. So literally it was problematic. Yeah. And they were just passing him on to the next grade. Not saying every school is like that. Right. But with a lot of schools, the ratio is just off in terms of, you know, students who need extra attention to be able to boost their grade level, or who need extra attention because they are gifted in some way. And yes, they're 11, but if you give them the opportunity, they can be on that 10th grade, 11th grade level, you know, with consistent practice, right? Okay. So we give them that space. And when you think about, you know, if you're sitting at home with your child, or if you put them in like, you know, some type of small group tutoring session, right? They're going to advance more quickly academically just because of the personal attention that they're getting. Right. Just like when you go to the gym and you're working with a personal trainer, you're going to get different results because you have that individualized attention. So it's not about, you know, comparing like apples to oranges, so to say, with the public school system. Right. It's just math. Like if your child is getting more attention, then they're going to grow at a faster rate academically. And so that's the reason why we have the academic results, is because of that.
That's so good.
You know, and because of the care.
That's so good. And I think one thing, the other component is obviously the virtual component, which I think maybe 10 years ago would have scared a lot of people away, right? But obviously the pandemic taught the whole world, hey, we can do the whole world through Zoom, right? It's okay, right? So obviously the technology piece of it, y'all have got that down. I've experienced that. It's Zoom calls. It's pretty standard, right? And then, who would you say this is not good for, right? And so we were talking about some scenarios earlier where obviously sometimes there are family challenges, where there's trauma, there's reasons kids have behavioral issues at school, right? There's things happening. So there are scenarios where, hey, probably not, y'all aren't going to be the best support system because of how it is set up. So who would you say is the school is not for, right? And not to be exclusionary, but just Absolutely. It's not for everybody,
it's not
right?
For you. No. No, but before I answer that question, I just want to add, in terms of who it's for, aside from the academics, we also have the cultural piece that is very strong.
Right.
Your children are going to know who Marcus Garvey is. They're going to know who Kwame Ture is. They're going to know who Kwame Nkrumah is. Yeah. They're going to understand these things. They're going to know who Ida B. Wells is. They're not going to just have that kind of, trivia selection of like, okay, I know Rosa Parks, Dr. King, George Washington Carver, Benjamin Banneker. That's it.
Right.
They're going to understand how Malcolm X advocated, for human rights to the United Nations, right? And they're going to understand this so fluently that they're going to be able to make jokes comparing Kwame Ture to Malcolm X,
But it's like normal, I guess not other kids are going to be like, they have no idea. Most adults would have no idea what your kids are joking about, right? Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Right. So there's that element.
Okay.
Right? But in terms of who it's not for, like if you don't want your children to be culturally aware, then it's not for you.
Yeah.
If you're like, oh no, I don't want them to learn about our history. I want them to just learn about history from a Eurocentric perspective only, and not have any insight into like how that affected people of the African diaspora specifically, or ancient African civilizations or anything like that, then no, it's not for you in those cases. Also, I would say if there are students who are coming from environments where there's trauma, right? In a sense of, your child has been exposed to a lot of things, and now they're at school and they like cussing everybody out and like fighting and whatnot. It's not that we would be totally closed off to receiving that child, but we would have to have a conversation with both the parent and the child to understand where they are now, and if that's the behavior that they want to continue to display, or if they're ready for something different. Because if the child does not want to be there, does not want to be with us, if they want to come in and like raise a fuss, then it's not for you. If the parent is not able to support the child, with giving them that backup, because it's still homeschooling, the parents still have a role. Yeah. We're teaching all these classes, but you still have to do the homework with your child. You still have to take your child out for athletics. You still have to have those daily discussions so that they're reinforcing what they're learning and so on. Take them to the library so they can check out books. Yeah. You still have a role as a parent. So if you're looking to just kind of drop your kid off somewhere and have somebody else, to raise your child, then it's not the environment for you. If your child want to come in like creating conflict, it's not the environment. Now, we have had some children that have been expelled from school in their area for like some really serious issues. And we've had conversations and said like, hey, what do you want? What do you want now? I just want to change my life. I want to get back on track. I want to learn. Okay, we're going to give this a shot. Right. And then they've just thrived because they were ready for that. So it really depends on that, like family by family basis, right? In terms of, whether the family and the child are ready for that homeschool environment, because it's not public school. It's like comparing like apples to oranges, right? It's different, But you can compare it to like traditional homeschooling more so than public school. It's like if you're a traditional homeschooler, right? And maybe you're working from home, or one of the wife or the husband, or you can even be a single parent, whatever. and you're working from home and, you know, you're trying to bring in the finances, but you don't have as much time, you know, anymore to be able to sit there and work with your child on all these different things, right? Or maybe you travel often. We have a lot of families who travel internationally regularly.
Yeah.
So they're able to take school with them, right? We're able to offer a space where your child is going to have consistency.
Man, that's so
good.
And
that's something that homeschoolers struggle with. Is consistency. You know?
Absolutely. Man, this has been so good. My soul is so blessed, and I appreciate who you are, and we didn't have time to get into your story, but you have an incredible story. You made incredible sacrifices for your own family, and for the families in your school, and that's why I wanted to do this episode, because I was like, yo, the world needs to see this beautiful person that is doing an amazing work, and so I appreciate you. So if you want more information about Whole Living Academy, we'll have that in the description. We'll also have contact information from Miss Nikala, so you can reach out to her if you have any questions about potentially putting your kids into her program. You know who it's for. We know who it's not for. So definitely watch the episode and make sure this is the right thing for you before you reach out. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any last words, anything you want to say?
I just want to say maybe that, you know, we accept families from all religious, cultural, and socioeconomic backgrounds.
Okay.
So if you feel like the program, you know, is a good fit for you, then just visit our website, wholelivingacademy.com, and set up a free registration call. And that can also serve as a consultation. You know, if you just have some questions, if you're like, hey, I just want to better understand what this is all about, or if homeschooling is for me, or if I'm already homeschooling, but it's virtual schooling, you know, for my child, then we'd be happy to talk to you, you know, and answer those questions. You know, and maybe you're on the higher end of things and like, you're like, oh, this program is like super cheap. Or maybe, you know, you're struggling financially and you're like, oh, you know, I don't know if I can afford that. Right. But just have a conversation with us and let's see how we can help you.
Yeah. And if you have, if you have means and you're looking for a program that you want to support financially, you guys take donations.
Please, we absolutely, we've given out like literally over $100,000 in scholarships, you know, over this first 5 years.
Okay.
And as I said before, we're not receiving government funding. So that's just, I'll tell you, I have not owned a car in 8 years.
Wow.
Right? Like, literally, we make those personal sacrifices and choices, because if I had a car note and car insurance to pay, then that would take away from our ability to be able to meet parents where they are in terms of their socioeconomic background. So
that's so incredible.
Absolutely, we are fundraising, you know, whether you're able to donate $1, $100, $1,000, then that will go towards being able to provide this type of personalized learning to more students who have different challenges that they're coming to us with, whether that be, you know, just working towards academic mastery, helping them bring out their gifts, you know, or some of our students who have those medical backgrounds, you know, that are really challenging, you know, or neurological differences that are challenging. So you're supporting students from all of those different arenas and being able to get not only academic mastery, but the emotional support that they need, the cultural awareness that they need.
Wow.
And that's something worth investing in.
Yeah, so good. Man, well, y'all have heard it. I don't even got to say anything more. If you're still watching, you understand the value of what you just experienced. And thank y'all for watching. Hit the subscribe button and hit that like button for me, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Come back and watch the other ones.
Let's do it. See y'all next time.
Thank you.